Hey guys, what's up? So these are the writings of Michael Moorcock, and I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him. If you have, you know how great he is. If you haven't, check it out. If you like fantasy, more fantasy than science fiction, check out the writings of Michael Moorcock. The book I would recommend over every other book is this one here. This is the older version of it. This is Elric of Melniboné. So if you've never heard it before, if you've read other Moorcock stuff, if you've never heard of Michael Moorcock, check out this one, Elric of Melniboné. This is probably the best fantasy book ever written. So check it out, more than any of these other fantasy books that are like popular that you're reading about now or you see like popular, all these other books that are fantasy genre. This is the one fantasy genre. All of those books, a lot of these books that are coming out now, their original influence was from this book. This is Elric of Melniboné. So what do I think of Michael Moorcock and his writings? Okay, so this is my favorite thing by him, Elric of Melniboné. This book is from DAW, and this has got an older cover on it from Michael Whelan. Michael Whelan does a lot of this Elric art. This is the main character. He's got the sword and whatever, and it's about him and stuff like that. So Michael Whelan has a lot of the covers, and this is what's compelling about the book. Is what's cool. The covers are just amazing. I'm not going to go into too much about what the covers, but the cover of the older books are really, really amazing. The books aren't available like this anymore. The newer books that came out, the rewritten stories that came out, they have other covers that are cool, but I really love the Michael Whelan. This is all oil paints or acrylic paints, I think, or anything like that, and he does amazing, amazing covers. So, Elric of Melniboné, what's cool is this is the best story ever. And what they were coming out at is these small little pamphlet books that are awesome. They're like 200 pages long. This one's like 160 pages long. This is great. It's lightweight, it's small, it's thin. You can put it in your jacket or anything. It takes up no weight. You can take it with you, read it on the bus, read it on the train. And it's fun, it's a fast read. The thing is, don't worry about the story being too small. There's like, I think 10 of these books, because they have this one, and they have another one, a sequel, and it just keeps going. So out of all my favorite things is Michael Moorcock's book here, this one. I think this was like written in the 70s, in the late 70s. This is an old book I got in a secondhand store. I just like I bought it because I wanted to collect it. I also bought it because of the new art. And, even though I have the story already, I just like the art and stuff like that. So some of the other books that are really, really interesting about Michael Moorcock is his Runestaff series, with like this one, The Mad God's Amulet. This is book 2, the Runestaff series. And the Runestaff is a story, it's a story about a different aspect of the Eternal Champion. The Eternal Champion that's kind of like, he's been writing these books and books and books, different characters, different stories and worlds that are based on different aspects of basically the same person, the Eternal Champion. Someone who is destined to fight forever, to be a warrior forever, just destined into combat, destined to clash, and destined to, go to wars with people and always have this conflict, this like fighting in his life. Like, he's just like, that's his destiny, that is his fate. He is the Eternal Champion, and a lot of the story is this main character coming to terms with that, this constant fate of his having to fight this and that and other thing, is amazing. Like having a sword that just like kind of has a mind of its own, a spirit of its own, and just like that likes to kind of like eat its friends, and like it just like works on its own. It doesn't, you don't have to actually like use the sword will like jump out of your hand and like eat your friend and stuff like that. And that's what the sword does, it eats people's souls and stuff. This is a book I want to read, and I'm going to be honest with you. Okay, so like History of the Runestaff is cool. I think the other books are not as good as Elric, so I read the best book first. However, this is the other books that people are saying are really, really good. And this is the History of the Runestaff. I would have probably read this already, except for the size of this book. It's just too big. Seriously, why do people publish these books? Yes, it's the complete story, but I mean, look, this is one of the modules of the book. This is one of the books. This is so much better to buy a book like this than to have this brick. How do you even carry this around with you? How do you read this? How do you hold this in your hand? It's just too big. The History of the Runestaff is basically another weapon of the Eternal Champion. Elric has the sword. He's got a sword. He has Stormbringer, the sword, and this is a magic sword, and it gives him power, and it's like you can't really beat him with this sword. He's just overkill. He is very, very powerful with this sword. You can't beat him with the sword. And this guy is another different weapon, and the weapon is like this Eternal Champion's weapon, and this is a staff, a rune staff, which is also, that's a rune sword. This is a rune staff. And no, I haven't read the whole thing, so I can't tell you like the story, the whole story. I read, I think, here is the placeholder, so I read up to here. Honestly, the only reason I haven't read the whole thing is it's really, really difficult to hold in your hand when you're reading. But the good news is all this stuff is available on Kindle and Nook and stuff like that, so you can always read it the digital copy. If you like the physical copy, you're gonna have to like, probably your best bet is to go to like a secondhand used bookstore and see if they have any of the older books, because a lot of times people will have these older books in their collection. They'll give it to the used bookstore and they'll get a few dollars for it, and then the bookstore will sell it real cheap. This was like $2 or something at the bookstore. It's amazingly cheap. So this is about a different world, a different character, a different story. It's still the Eternal Champion. It's still that same warrior, and all of his warriors, they're very, very like high class. Like Elric was an emperor. This guy was also like a king, or he had some kind of royalty. I don't know if he was a king or whatever, but he has some royal status. And this is a completely different story. He liked writing these fantasy stories, and he was very, very good at them. In fact, out of all of the fantasy stories that I've read, I really like Michael Moorcock's stories the most. The thing is, he hasn't been writing any fantasy stories in a long, long time. So I was at, I haven't found them in like bookstores really, until I was in London. I was in Waterstones and some of the other bookstores, and he's really significant because he's English. So all of the English bookstores have his books, but they don't have his fantasy books. They've got the newer stuff that he's writing, and this is more of like a fiction kind of thing. But this is a awesome, awesome book. It's actually good. I'm really enjoying it at first. The thing is, I'm not like enjoying it as much as I enjoy the Elric books, but you can't always enjoy. I mean, Elric books are a 10 out of 10, and if you're reading an 8 or 9 out of 10 by the same author, it's really good. But you're thinking, oh man, it's not as good as this. Well, you can't really always be like dishing out like best-selling, epic fantasy amazement books. It's just like, you just can't do it, and it's not going to resonate with people. Maybe some people think this is the best book from him, or this is just as good as the Elric saga. And I have heard people saying, yeah, this is a great book. People seem to like really, really think that Elric of Melniboné, the Elric saga, is the best books by Michael Moorcock, but this is really enjoyable because you want to read more stuff by the same author. You want to read more fantasy. So this is really enjoyable. It's a different story, so don't expect it to be like Elric. It's not Elric. The guy's a different personality. It's a different world, a different story, but it's that fantasy, high fantasy, saga fantasy. And if you don't mind the big book like this, you could probably find this kind of book. This is huge. I mean, look at the difference. First you're like, making these books that are like 160 pages, and then you come out with this one. Where's like the medium in this? Where's the happy balance? Look, 641 pages. I mean, like, why do you have to go from this little book to this brick? I mean, come on. Why don't you like half of this book? Make these into 2 books? Much better. You don't have to make this into a brick, and it's okay that you made this small, but you could have made this less of a brick. Especially if you like, if you were previously selling small books, why do you change to this? I don't know. So that's kind of funny. But yeah, but this is what I'd recommend. Once you've finished reading all of the Elric books, or if you've read a few Elric books just to get an idea of, until you've had your fill of Elric, continue with the stories with this one. This is the other one. And this is not the second favorite book, but this is a good one. This is the History of the Rune Staff. The one that I feel like is the favorite, and I don't have it here because I couldn't find it on my shelf, because I don't know. I thought it was this one, but it's not. There are books specifically called, they're for the Eternal Champion. There are books that are like, and it's not this one, but there are books called specifically the stories of the Eternal Champion, and that's when Elric became this eternal champion. That's when the story of Elric became the story of the eternal champion. And the eternal champion, there's like 3 or 4 books. I don't know exactly how many books there are. There's several. There's a few books of the eternal champion. And I recommend that also, as if you guys have read Elric, or if you haven't read Elric, or if you're interested in Michael Moorcock or high fantasy or fantasy, check out not only Elric, but check out the Eternal Champion series. Try to find books about the Eternal Champion. And these books are, they're stories also, there's also these small books, but they're stories about the Eternal Champion. So different aspects that are not Elric, but I do think those stories are just as good as the Elric stories, even though they're not about Elric. Those stories are really, really good. So that's my second favorite thing to read, in addition to reading the Elric saga, is read the Eternal Champion series, or like the several or few books, whatever it is, that he has about Eternal Champion. I know I read 2 or 3 of them, and they were really, really good, and I thought they were as good as Elric, but I just like the Elric characters, really, really good. And then there's like this one. So this book is awesome. If you can find something that's not a brick, check it out. Really interesting book. It's weird. It's you know, I'm not giving away anything about this book because it's so worth reading. But you know, I really like to, and this one I think is an import. But you know, I really want to continue reading this. It's really good. There's another one here. So the other book that Michael Moorcock wrote that's really interesting is the Chronicles of Korra. There's this one, and this is called the Knight of Swords. This is the King of Swords. So there's like Knight of Swords, the first book. Queen of Swords is the second book. I don't have it because the bookstore had it for a week and then they got rid of it, and they didn't sell it out. They just took it off the shelf and sent it away. So I don't know why they didn't have it. So yeah, there's this one, and then this is the original cover, which I think is better than the new cover. I don't know why they even did this. This is not even a cover. This is an actual illustration. This isn't really, so I don't know why they did this. Also, this book is just as much content as this book, and this book is like half the weight. This is a bigger book, but as you can see, like the writing is bigger, and here the writing is smaller, but I think that's like regular size writing. So anyway, this is about Chronicles of Korra. I've been reading this. I've been trying to read this, and a lot of people love it, and they're significant, and they're telling me, you got to read this, you got to read this, you got to read this. I've read some of the Rune Staff. I've read almost all of the Elric, and I've read the Eternal Champion, which is not this one. But I'm trying to read this one. The thing about the Korra book is, you know, it's good because it's Michael Moorcock. The stories are good. The character is good. Everything is good about it, except it is so violent. It is so violent. It is like unnecessarily violent. And I just feel like it's hard to read because of the violence. I don't know why, you know, I don't know why he wrote such a violent story. Now the thing is, I'm only reading the beginning of it. This is the first book. There's 6 books, and I've only read like a few of the first book. And yeah, I don't know, it's so violent. I don't even know why they have a book about that. There's something I wanted to show you guys in here. I don't know where it is. I just had it. Oh man. There are like commercials in these books. Okay, it's this one. Oh, here we go. Which one is it? Okay, here we go. There are commercials in this book. I did not know this when I got this. This I also got this was 75 cents originally when it came out in the late 70s, and I do not know, I think this was a library book that someone took from the library. Okay, this was $2.95, not a big deal, but I've never seen this before. But look, inside, there's advertisements for science fiction. 1,000 pages of great science fiction. What the hell? 10 cents, you get 1,000 pages of great science fiction for 10 cents with this advertisement. So this is cool. Now what's cool about getting this book is I got this like cool advertisement. 10 cents to get science fiction. And there's another one in here. Was this? Oh God. And this is for True cigarettes. This was back when like cigarettes were a thing. And you guys might think cigarettes are still a thing, but I don't know. It stopped being a thing for me anyway. I don't like them anymore. But these are, it's a cigarette commercial inside a fantasy book. Thing is, these are fantasy book. Kids were reading this. I was reading this in high school. Oh my God, look at that. They used to sell cigarettes to kids in high school who like to read fantasy. See what I'm saying? So Michael Moorcock is fantastic. I think he's iconic. I'm pretty sure he's the best fantasy author of all time. If you look at authors like Neil Gaiman and other authors, you will see how much inspired they were by Michael Moorcock. His stories were original. He was the first to write these stories, and they were basically just about things that were happening in his life that he changed. That he kind of like explained them in characters, in situations, in magic spells, in worlds, in the Eternal Champion. I think at the time, like, he felt like there was a constant struggle going on. So he created this Eternal Champion character where this character just kept on fighting no matter where they were. He was destined to fight forever, like no matter where he was, like no matter what was going on, destined to fight all the time. And that's the thing about the story. That's where Elric is like, you know, fated to be this eternal champion, this fighter that just, there's always one war after another, one battle after another constantly. And he's tired of it, and he keeps going, you know. There's also, if you guys have ever heard of the Blue Oyster Cult, the band, the Blue Oyster Cult, there are 2 songs by the Blue Oyster Cult. One is called Black Blade, which is about Stormbringer, the sword of Elric, and the other one is Veteran of the Psychic Wars, which is also about Elric and the Eternal Champion. And which is interesting about the Blue Oyster Cult. I think they were like real fans of Moorcock and his books and stuff like that. So yeah. Another thing I want to say is these are amazing covers. The art of Michael Whalen, you know, another Michael, of course. Those Michaels have this, you know, those Michaels have to stick together. Michael Whalen, he did this one. He did a lot of other ones, and he just, you know, his covers were amazing. And I really think what's amazing is you take my favorite, like, pictures, drawings, illustrations of all time and put it with my favorite story of all time. You just put them together on the same book, and I think it makes for, like, I don't even know how to describe that. That is just truly amazing. Seriously, I saw the pictures of Michael Whalen before I heard about the stories. And I loved the pictures. I didn't know that it was about that character, what the character was about, or any of that stuff. But I just liked the pictures. I just was like, wow, that's amazing. It's like, you know, you see all these different, like, paintings and stuff of this character. And I didn't even know it was the same character. I just thought wow, his fantasy hero sword characters are so cool. And look at that. And then it turns out to be like one of my favorite paintings of all time. And then Michael Moorcock's books turns out to be like one of my favorite, you know, stories of all time, fantasy stories of all time. And you put them together, it's just like so amazing that just came together that way. I don't know how that. It's just, I think it was fated. I think it was just like you take the best artist with the best writer and just put them together, and it's just like, whoa. You know, I think that they found each other because that really was the best artist, and this was definitely the best writer. And that artist was looking for a story that he can illustrate, you know, that's really going to express what his artistic vision. And that writer was looking for that artist that's really going to, like, express the story that he's saying. And they found each other. And when they worked together, I think that it made this really popular. And a lot of times, you know, these stories were not always popular, and a lot of these people have never heard of this. And the thing is that I think a big reason why people have heard of this is they pick up the story because of the cover, and then they read the story and they get blown out. They go like, wow, this is amazing. But you originally pick up the story because of the cover. You're like, wow, this is a cool cover. This looks awesome. Let's check out the story. And then you read it and it's amazing. So yeah. So here we go. Now, then there was, like, Michael Moorcock continued with the Elric saga with Fortress of the Pearl and some other stories. I didn't like the last 2 books that came out about Elric because I don't think they were really about Elric. Like, they weren't really traditional Elric books. it wasn't in Melniboné, it wasn't in the world of Elric, it really wasn't how the Elric stories were written before. It really wasn't a lot about, it wasn't really Elric. The names were, it was supposed to be Elric in one of his incarnations, but it really, the stories were not Elric. If you just didn't tell me that was Elric, I would never have thought it was Elric. So I just didn't get into a lot of those stories. I've heard other people say that really didn't get into them, and I feel like he wrote those 2 other books to try to get back to Elric, and I think it didn't really fly as much, so he stopped writing about Elric altogether. So there hasn't been a new story by this author in like a really, really long time. But who knows, because he might just keep on doing this stuff also. And they have made comic books about the characters. So the characters and the worlds and the ideas, they live on. And other creators want to continue with this kind of story. They want to continue making songs about Elric, making stories about Elric, making paintings about Elric and all of these characters that Michael Moorcock has created. So there's this one. So I really want to read more of this one, the Korra book. Very, very violent. I don't know how I'm gonna get through the violence, but if it's good enough, I guess you keep reading it. So I don't know. These are great. Check out this one. If you're just getting into Michael Moorcock, or you're interested in reading any of this, or you have read it, check out the Elric Saga first, the Eternal Champions. The books are hard to get sometimes, so it might take a little bit of a searching, or you might be able to find it digitally on Nook or Kindle. So those 2 and the other stories, I do recommend, and pretty much this is the whole Eternal Champions series. I don't think there were any other books besides these characters. Was this one, because it's all they got is this one after Elric and the Eternal Champion. You got this one, which is a continuation of the same idea, and then Chronicles of Korra. Now, I don't know which one is, I'm not going to say which one is better because I haven't read all of these, but right now I'm probably going to read this one first. It's still violent, and Elric is a little bit violent, and this is still violent, but Elric is not that violent. You don't focus on the violence. With Korra, it's like really, really violent. But this one, I do recommend the Rune Staff. I really think after reading the other stuff, read the Rune Staff. Read Korra, just because, I'm not saying because I liked it, but because I heard other people like it. I've tried reading it. I have all of the books except one of them, and so it's just up to me to read them. But yeah, also with the Rune Staff, if you can get a smaller book, do not buy this book like I did, because it's hard to read. I bought this wanting to read it, and it's just hard to hold. It's heavy. If you can find like a secondhand bookstore, you can get it digitally on Nook or Kindle. Get it that way, because whenever I buy these books, even though I love them, I end up not reading them. So yeah. So let me know what you guys think. If you've read anything by Michael Moorcock, what you think about Michael Moorcock, what you think about his stories, or his fantasy, or his non-fantasy, his relevance in the fantasy world, or his relevance now, because he's still writing stories now. Let me know what you guys think in the description, in the comments. Please like, and subscribe to my videos and my channel, and I will see you guys in another video, and keep in touch. Let me know what you think, and yeah, talk to you soon. Take care.